Imagine leaving everything you've ever known for a promise. A promise of gold, land, and a fresh start. But between you and that dream lies 2,000 miles of untamed, brutal wilderness. In the 1800s, the American frontier wasn't just a place. It was a survival horror movie in real life. There were number 911 calls. No hospitals. Just you, the elements, and the thin line between life and a shallow grave. Today, we're counting down the 5 most brutal survival stories of the American West. From the man who crawled through hell with a broken back to the families forced into the unthinkable just to stay alive. If you think you've had a rough day, you're about to see what the human spirit is truly capable of when the alternative is death. Let's dive in. In 1823, Hugh was part of a fur-trapping expedition in the Missouri River Territory. While scouting ahead, he stumbled upon a grizzly bear and her 2 cubs. The attack was swift and savage. Glass was shredded. His throat was ripped open, his ribs were exposed, and his leg was snapped. His companions, thinking he was a walking corpse, took his rifle and gear, leaving him in a shallow grave to die alone. But Glass didn't die. He woke up, covered in maggots that were literally eating the gangrene off his wounds. With no weapon and a broken leg, he began a 200-mile crawl toward the nearest fort. He survived by eating wild berries, roots, and the raw meat of a bison carcass he found. Driven by pure, cold-blooded revenge, Glass crawled for 6 weeks through the freezing wilderness. When he finally reached safety, he didn't just survive. He walked back into the lives of the men who abandoned him like a ghost seeking justice. Perhaps the darkest chapter in American history, the Donner Party was a group of 87 pioneers who took a shortcut that led straight into hell. Trapped by an early, massive blizzard in the Sierra Nevada mountains, they were buried in snow that reached the tops of their cabins. Within weeks, their food ran out. First, they ate their pack animals, then their dogs. Finally, they were boiling old leather hides to make a glue-like soup. As the winter dragged on and the bodies piled up, the survivors were forced to make a choice that still haunts history: cannibalism. They began to eat the deceased members of their own group just to see the next sunrise. By the time a rescue party arrived months later, only 47 people were left alive. It remains the ultimate testament to how quickly civilization vanishes when the hunger becomes absolute. They set out for a better life in California, but instead, they found a frozen grave that forced them to lose their humanity just to keep their pulse. In 1808, John Colter, a legendary mountain man, was captured by a Blackfoot war party. Instead of a quick end, they offered him a sadistic game. They stripped him completely naked, took his boots, and gave him a 30-second head start before 100 warriors gave chase. Colter wasn't just running for his life. He was running across miles of scorching earth covered in prickly pear cactus. With every step, thorns pierced his bare feet, and his lungs burned with a thin mountain air. He ran so hard his nose began to bleed, but he didn't stop until he reached the Jefferson River. He dove under a massive beaver dam, hiding in a tiny air pocket while the warriors searched above him for hours. Shivering and bloody, he then walked 11 days back to civilization. He arrived at a fort looking like a ghost, with no skin left on the soles of his feet, proving that sometimes the only thing faster than an arrow is a man with nothing left to lose. In 1849, a group of gold seekers decided to take a shortcut through a valley that didn't even have a name yet. They thought it would save them weeks. Instead, it nearly cost them their souls. As they descended into the basin, the temperature skyrocketed to over 120 degrees. Their oxen began to drop dead from heat stroke. Their water barrels dried into dust. Desperate, they were forced to slaughter their remaining cattle, using the wood from their own wagons to cook the meat. 2 young men, William Manley and John Rogers, left the group to walk nearly 300 miles across the desert to find help, eventually returning with supplies just as the families were preparing to die. As the survivors finally climbed out of the valley, one woman turned back and whispered, "Goodbye, Death Valley." The name stuck. They survived, but they left their youth and their health buried in the hottest place on Earth. Not every survival story is heroic. Some are just chilling. Boone Helm was a man who became a legend for all the wrong reasons. Trapped in the mountains during a brutal winter, Helm and his partner ran out of food. When his partner eventually died of exhaustion, Helm didn't mourn. He used the body as a food source to stay alive. This wasn't a one-time thing. Helm was known to abandon his companions and subsist on them whenever the mountain winters got tough. He eventually made it to a town in British Columbia, bragging about how many men he had tasted. He was a predator in every sense of the word, using his knowledge of the frontier to hunt the very people he traveled with. He represents the darkest side of the West, where survival didn't just mean fighting the cold. It meant becoming the monster the stories warned you about. The frontier didn't just test survival, it defined it. Which story shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe for more deep dives into history. See you in the next one.